Pile 3. My little goblin. Firstly, congratulations on choosing my favourite pile. Not in terms of content, but just in terms of using the Jim Henson decks and Brian Froud decks together. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I've done it for clients privately, but not for this channel yet. So, hey, shout out. I will be speaking in Dark Crystal and Labyrinth speak throughout this, like not doing the voices, I hasten to add, but you know, referring to characters by name, etc. So if you're not familiar with those movies, you may have some questions. Just pop them down below if that's the case. But yeah, I imagine if you picked this combo, Cartomancy wise, you're fairly familiar with it. So what I'll say before we begin is that this is not a professional or career reading. So if your competition or realm of differentiation is a professional one or like an academic or professional setting, this probably isn't for you. It could take place in those kinds of environments in an interpersonal way, but it's not like directly related to getting on the course, getting the job, etc., etc., right? It's very much, I would say, relationships primarily, friends, family, and or any kind of connections that you have romantically speaking. So, with that said, let's start with the Soul Shrinker in reverse, which I'm going to explore from the book, from this magnificent Brian Froud, Jessica Macbeth Fairies Oracle. If you don't know already, Brian Froud is the artist that designed Dark Crystal and Labyrinth in terms of the creatures, costume design, set design, all kinds of stuff. And he has several fairy decks and oracular stuff going on. So it's worth checking out if you like, you know, Age of Resistance, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, that kind of stuff. Okay, the Soul Shrinker. Cruelty, malice, gossip, curses, destruction, blessing. Before I read this out, have you been throwing curses, Pile 3? Think carefully about what that means as I read. The distasteful task of the Soul Shrinker is to observe what we say to and about others, especially the mean, nasty and unnecessarily critical things. By observing our behaviour this way, he reflects it back to us, making us more aware of it. This is a Buddha type of job, and it requires great compassion, understanding and forgiveness if the Soul Shrinker himself is not to be dragged down to our level. If we're just inwardly spluttering, looking for words, he may even suggest to us the words that express our feelings and energy. Then it's our choice, our test, whether or not we say them aloud. There are two important things about malicious gossip: unnecessary criticism, verbal cruelty, sarcasm, and scoring off of others. One is that it demeans the speaker, makes him less, makes his aura darker, and encourages the behaviour as a habit, continually eroding the brightness and potential goodness of the speaker. The other important thing is that this is a way that we actually curse others. Even if the recipient doesn't hear the words of our blessing or curse, even if the words are not spoken aloud, they're carried as discordant notes through ecstasis, sung of the universe to the recipient. This is a reference to elsewhere in the deck. Fortunately, that's not all there is to it, or such behaviour would be unforgivably wicked. Not that it isn't petty. Pretty nearly that anyway. I was saying petty because I'm thinking of goblins and you chose them. We all have a choice about whether we accept curses or blessings. If we choose not to accept it, then all of the energy boomerangs back to the sender, who then gets a well-deserved double dose of it. Once, long ago, the Soul Shrinker was very beautiful, but listening to and witnessing all of this human ugliness has rubbed off on his appearance, like that of a lovely frog in a polluted pool, with his skin raw and forming hideous growths. His heart is compassionate and anguished. His heartfelt wish is that we learn right speech and right thought. If you are air dominant or very swordsy, take note. Every wicked thing a human says makes the Soul Shrinker more ugly. Every time a human learns this lesson, the Soul Shrinker becomes a bit less ugly. As you can see, humanity on the whole has a lot of work to do on this. Malice, vicious gossip and cruelty are occurring somewhere in this situation, cursing the people involved. The best way to change this is to begin scattering blessings, thank yous, positive feedback and kind words in all directions. It helps a lot if they're actually meant. I think you got my favourite pile because you've been a sneaky little goblin and you've been saying words that you don't necessarily mean about somebody that you feel in competition with, not realising, or perhaps realising but not acknowledging, that those words are a curse. So spoiler alert, this will be less a reading about differentiating yourself from the competition in order to conquer, in order to get the thing that you're setting your sights on, and a little bit more about the shit you've been talking, the tea you've been spilling, the shade you've been throwing on those people in your life that you feel competitively about, okay? This Soul Shrinker card relates directly to you, and I'm going to turn it up the right way because I want you to bear in mind that if you could only speak with more beautiful words, he would become more beautiful. Interestingly, when we're in the core messages for the reading, so not from either party to the other, just an undercurrent, we've got, I want to be the best friend you've ever had, and you're so thoughtful it warms me to my core. I feel this is a simultaneous thing, right? I think that people are genuinely interested in you as a person. This is a reading about friendship dynamics, possibly relationship dynamics, but it's one that describes a very popular person. So I do think that people would say to you, I want to be the best mate you've ever had, right? And that includes partners as well. And with the you're so thoughtful it warms me to my core, this is kind of both a thing that you wish was true and a thing that people think is true of you. There is a deception here between the way that you act with people and the words that you're saying. We do have some sevens, including the Seven of Swords. So there's a sneaky energy. And the Seven of Swords in this deck, or in this, because it can appear two ways because this is a combo deck, but in your particular, oh, no music, no TV. That's interesting. I'm going to carry on. In your particular way of understanding this, the Seven of Swords is the Chamberlain, right? It could have been from the Labyrinth deck, in which case I don't know who it turns up as. But Chamberlain is such a sneaky character. He's integral to the events of it. Like without him, possibly the Dark Crystal wouldn't have been healed, although his very goal is to sabotage that process, right? He is integral in a kind of, what's the word? Chaotic evil kind of a sense. Like he's a bad character, but we fucking need him for stuff to transpire. And as Aughra expresses within the film, kind of whatever's meant to happen will happen, and it will use the people involved to happen in the way that it's meant to. So Chamberlain is required, if you like. And in the same way, sometimes we're required to enter into a Chamberlain dynamic with somebody else, where we're being sneaky, we're not being fully truthful, or at a simple level where we don't want to lie or anything like that, we're not being too careful with our words, and we might say things about people that we wouldn't want said about us. But the thing with this like fated or fortune-based quality to Chamberlain is that I don't want you to think that that absolves you of responsibility. This is still a swords card. We're still watching your words. This reading is kind of a bollocking, my dude. And I already have you in the good books because of the deck that you picked and what I think you're probably into as a result. But that allows me the vantage point to say, hey, maybe you're not in competition with this person. Maybe you are. But the way that you've been conducting yourself is a bit shady. Whether or not that you think it is, whether or not that you define yourself in that kind of a way. I'm being told to try the music again, but I think it's the TV that is off. Yes, it is. 2 seconds. Yeah, whether or not this is like your intended message, it is the one that you're transmitting for the moment, okay? So it'll be interesting to see which song we come back to when we've done this. Sorry about the camera being knocked a little bit there. Scatter heart. What a good pun, right? Your heart is scattered. The other deck by Brian Froud is called The Heart of Fairy, and it's one that I want to incorporate. Donate down below if you want to, help me to do that so I can do a love reading with it. But yeah, scatter heart makes me think of the Heart of Fairy. It also makes me think of somebody whose core soul is probably very innocent, very magical, right? There's a reason you're drawn to 80s fantasy movies. And it's not just that they're badass, it's that you are quite a pure soul, quite a magical person in some ways. I think that's fair. But your heart is scattered. That integrity that you hold by picking the Henson deck and by being drawn to these creatures and the wonderful ways they treat each other is not carried through in the way that you've been conducting yourself through your speech. It won't always sort of go to, right, this is a spectrum, okay? So at one end, we have a very innocent, potentially fairly naive person who's just been maybe talking about a situation that is very real and affects them very truthfully, but they've been using words about the people or person involved that they wouldn't want to hear about themselves because they're angry and they're hurt, right? Right across to the other end of the spectrum, this is somebody who's curse happy, who deals in Malefica not as just defense, but as like retribution, who's in their Kali energy, their vengeance energy, and will just fuck up someone's life in order to feel better about themselves. Where you lie on that spectrum of words is not as important as the fact that I'm referring to that spectrum, okay? So if I call you out, I don't want you to feel like I'm attacking you as a person. I don't want you to feel like I don't see you as a good individual. It's more that what I'm saying is, and what the reading is saying, is that words are powerful. And just as you would use affirmations to manifest something you want, if you're talking shit about someone, you're not only reinforcing that that's the way they behave towards you, but you're also sending them a kind of low-key curse. Right? You don't have to believe that when you speak ill of somebody, it will curse their life and they'll suddenly, get cancer or lose their job or have their relationship go kaput or whatever, right? It's not, for some of you it is a literal curse, but for many of you it's not that literal. We're just saying what the Soul Shrinker says. If you think of somebody in a negative way, whether or not it's through micro-expressions, and sort of other stuff that you can address as a skeptic, they're picking up on it, right? They're feeling your attention towards them. And therefore it's better to try and choose our language to, yes, describe and delineate a situation in that wonderful swords way, but also not to sort of curse somebody to more negativity than they're due. Right, so let's look at the energy that you're in. We've got the Gambler card, with a willingness to follow intuition even when others doubt you, or potentially a reliance on luck rather than hard work. And we've got the phrase, are you me? I want you to think very carefully about this perceived competition, right? And consider whether there is some aspect of them that you are afraid of seeing in yourself. All of these readings so far have been kind of mirror readings, and I do think it speaks to a truth, but it's also for a purpose within this particular video, okay? We're all dealing at the moment with people who bring up our triggers, reflect things about ourselves that we kind of want to improve on or wish weren't true, or reflect back to us truths about our lives that we find dissatisfactory in ways that make us more angry at this person than is proportionate. So when you're coming up with "are you me" to describe the competition, there is expressed either an outrage that this competition is just you, so why can't you have the same opportunity because you feel that they're exactly the same as you, or if that's not true, there's a sense that somebody you want to be very different from you carries some of the qualities you wish you didn't have, yeah? You following? With the Gambler thing, I do think that you're following your intuition. Like I said, I think you're a magical person. Whether or not you have a framework of spirituality or magic or whatever, I think that you're quite in touch with your gut feelings, your nudges. You can get onto the synchronicity vibe and kind of float upstream very easily, whether or not that's the language that you would use for the ease with which you move through the world. And yeah, I think that's a really positive quality, and it's kind of leaping in at the beginning of your reading, almost to say like, yes, there are going to be fantastic qualities about you through this, but hear us out, because if you believe in fairy goblin communication or whatever it is that you believe is speaking through me right now, it wants to say that you haven't been on your best behaviour and we're watching. And perhaps it's more kind of goblin-y energy, because goblins have this thing of being mischievous in a way that isn't going to end the world, but is low-key harmful, right? So it's the kind of curse thrown that won't end somebody's life, and it won't sabotage their best endeavours, but it will turn around the arrows and make them go in the wrong direction to where they've been wanting to go. Or it will, metaphorically, I hasten to add, abduct a child that they then have to go on a search for. It will send them on a different quest that you have spoken ill of them. And while this does tie into the grand purpose as expressed by Chamberlain, it also is possibly a road that they wouldn't have gone down to get to that thing if they had a fucking choice. And if you don't want your choices to be determined by the competition, then you sure as shit shouldn't be doing things that will change their course, right? I know there's a very complex system of ethics when we're talking about things like curses, and indeed about magical intervention more broadly, right? Gordon White has spoken very well on this, the fact that you can't do a quote-unquote positive magical act without intervening in a way that may inadvertently curse someone somewhere down the line, because you can't see the full picture. So you have to kind of make your deal with fortune as to what part you want to play. And when we're speaking about words and about the magic of word and air energy and utterance becoming true, you have to see your words sometimes as a magical act and ask what it is that you want to speak into being. And if you have no control over your level of intervention with somebody else, it's kind of that thing of like, are you willing to put it on the line to the extent that you know your energy has an effect, okay? So you don't need to see the whole picture, but if you know you said some shit, or you know you've been thinking ill of somebody, or perhaps you followed on from the last pile and we were talking about shallow energy and competing with somebody and pointing out their ugliness in a very shadowy way, then is that the dynamic that you want to be in magically? Is that the world you want to create? Because remember as well that when we talk about fantasy movies, we're talking about imaginative worlds being created by the person viewing the film. And I don't just mean you're watching it and you're receiving that information and you're imagining what it is that's in front of you. I mean that if you're, spiritually healthy, you will go away and perhaps extrapolate about that universe. We lost Wolfgang Petersen this week, or at the time of filming anyway. And something that I will forever be indebted to him as a soul for doing is pointing out the world of the never-ending story to me, right? It sounds like hyperbole or whatever, but hear me out, right? Because you clearly like Dark Crystal and Labyrinth at least, and I feel like the book of the never-ending story more so than the film, but the film was like the popular consciousness version of it, opened people up to the idea that their imaginative universes are a way of creating on earth what it is that they want in heaven, right? It's this biblical maxim, on earth as it is in heaven, as above so below, for you witches out there or magicians, right? So there's this idea that the terror of the nothing in the never-ending story is the idea that we'll be apathetic to our own imaginative landscapes because of real-life events, because of grief, or just an inability to imagine, sort of fostered by the way that culture is at the moment and the fact that we're spoon-fed a lot. The reason that I bring this up here is because I feel that you've picked the imaginative deck to talk to you about your own fantasia, your own thing that you're creating, what your own nothing is, what the fear is that swallows up your ability to speak nicely and use nice thoughts, and how it is that you would honour any fairy or goblin that you encountered, I'm mumbling my words, by sort of imagining the best possible world and speaking it to them as a gift, right? We're seeing Hoggle, so we're talking about fairy and goblin presents, and this one specifically is about the gift of plastic. I'll get to it. But it's all sort of like, it's speaking about if you were to just land yourself in the oubliette, or happen upon Thra somehow, and end up in either of these universes, or indeed the Wolfgang Petersen Neverending Story universe, what kind of things would you want to be saying about your life back home? And why the fuck aren't they the things you're saying about it in your quote-unquote reality, right? You're communicating a spell. You're expressing to the world what you want to see. The first thing to say, other than this positive gambler intuition stuff about what it is that you have that differentiates you from the competition, is that you, my friend, are a manifester. You're a master creator. You're somebody who spins story into the world. And if that all sounds a bit woo and a bit hokum for your paradigm, then just take it as, when you speak or think positively about your circumstances, you are charged with an almost disproportionate amount of energy to go get 'em tiger and get shit done and do what it is that you need to do. It's almost like your mindset is 10 times more powerful than the mindset of many of the people around you. And this is your gift. This is why you're drawn to magical worlds, because you're meant to bring the magic. You're meant to make worlds. The music is getting very dramatic, and the song is New World, right? You feeling me? So this is like, yes, we're going to talk about the competition, maybe, kind of. Yes, we're going to talk about your utterance and maybe the things that you wish you hadn't said. But if I communicate anything to you before the next album begins and before I really get stuck into this, it's that what you speak becomes true, whether it's about you or another person. So if you're pissed off at someone right now for having opportunities that you wish you had, or for perceived slights, or whatever it is, just speak about them the way that you would want them to be for a little while and see what happens. Okay, so we're on Vespertine, and we're also on your competition, right? So over here we've got Pioneer. Passion for doing and creating what has not been done before, right? This speaks to you also. This Are You Me is like they have your creative capacity, but they're expressing it in a more practical, down-to-earth way. What does that mean? They might be a literal inventor. They might be very well travelled. They might start again in a new place with relative ease to what you've experienced in the past. They might be bringing creative new ideas that you find threatening because they're so sort of quick and adaptable and brilliant. And you're like, what the fuck? Why can't I generate this stuff, right? This is why you're threatened. Excuse me. Hiccups when I'm channeling. But the shadow attribute that they've demonstrated to you also is that they're compulsive with a need to keep moving on. So if this person is well-travelled, they might also be like nomadic to a fault, where they're running away from something and they take it with them wherever they go. It's particularly useful to know in third-party situations, right? Because if we are looking to be romantically close to somebody and they're with somebody, but this person is kind of used to moving from thing to thing to thing, we can almost guarantee that it's not going to last very long and that what's meant for us will come to us in the end, right? I've recently been in that situation for myself, and I went through the process of a very long time watching another relationship play out, going, yeah, but they're not right for you though. And then lo and behold, everything that I thought would happen, everything that the cards told me would happen, happened. And I get the feeling that the person involved is rather embarrassed, right? So if you're in a third party, there is a smidge of that energy coming in. But what I don't want you to do is what I fell into the word trap of doing, where I bad-mouthed the third person and I described them without knowing them to other people, which I'm not proud of at all. That was a fucked up thing to do. And where I presumed that their weaknesses were automatically my strengths. So yes, this person is flighty, they're compulsive, etc. But are you, right? For me, there was a pointing to a person who was clearly very manipulative, clearly quite shallow with a person that I think didn't deserve that, and clearly quite sort of orchestrating or dictating what was happening next in a very covert way. Turns out that while I bitched about all of these qualities to my friends and cried over this person, I had all of these qualities, and that was what it was trying to wake me up to, right? I too was seeking status in just a very different way. I too was manipulating people around me in a very different way in order to draw boundaries that I couldn't draw in a more healthy fashion. So with this pioneer thing, yeah, it probably won't last very long. Yeah, they're not the person for the job, or if they are the person for the job, they'll probably leave it in 3 weeks. Or if they're, you know, entering your friendship group and you feel threatened, they'll probably move on pretty quick. But also you're being asked to look at what about that is true about you also. And therefore what is being called up from the shadow to heal via your fantasy universe, via how you speak about things, and particularly how you speak about yourself, right? Because now, truly, having had this dynamic, I can say that I'm not a person who would be going after the shallow aspects of this connection anymore, or would be going after the same status symbols in the way that I was. I'm not bothered about competing on the sort of, I don't want to give too much away, but I want to say, like, within certain realms, I was worried that this person had completely outdone me. And now, years later, from this dynamic and from watching it play out and watching it self-destruct, there's this sense of like, I don't need to be that shallow, right? I don't need to compete on those kind of levels. Not because I'm lacking or because I'm great in those things. It's kind of neither. It's just not important, right? It's not part of my journey. It's part of theirs. So that, again, like, pioneer is about setting new ground. And whenever we're speaking about that, and Uranus is in retrograde right now, so we very much are, we're also talking about differentiation from whatever it is that they're wanting to establish. Are they setting up something that is a realm within which you're already there? Or are they setting something up that's just not for you? Maybe you got piled too, right? Maybe it was the death of something old, and you're realizing that it's not your place to be like, well, I want a part of this new thing you're making, because it's not for you. Something better is, right? Interestingly, we do have very relationshipy stuff coming from them to you. So whether this is a third party or this is somebody speaking to you from a relationship or from a friendship that you want to keep is unclear. But we've got our comfortable silences are delectable, and please stop comparing yourself to other people. It's not them that I'm looking at, right? They did not... words. Come on. Cocoon has just come on. I love this song. But it might be saying, rather than trying to speak about this immediately, just cocoon and think about it for a bit, yeah? So, what I was trying to say was that in the previous dynamic I'm referring to, I was constantly comparing myself to another person instead of paying attention to the dynamic between me and my desire, or the person that I was desiring at that time, right? Whether or not this is a person speaking to you in a romantic connection, this message is still true in a kind of universe way, right? You're being called not to compare yourself with other individuals because the attention is actually still on you. And we can say that in a positive way of like, maybe you're still messaging this person even though they've been in a relationship for ages. Or maybe you know that your dynamic is such that it's kind of going to be out the competition or whatever, right? But the other way of viewing this is like, all eyes are on you, so make sure that you're well behaved, right? Don't do what I did and shame yourself. Don't erode your own boundaries and do things that you regret. And don't frame your position to other people in a way that is sending, you know, like air curses to them in a non-intentional way, and also sort of cursing yourself because you're constantly framing yourself in light of others. It's interesting that you've stumbled on this subject in a reading and that you've got this kind of a reading within it, because if anything, you're the exemplar to the other groups of whatever you frame yourself within in terms of the actions of other people is what will trap you, right? So if you're constantly looking to somebody who's getting the better grades, or fucking the partner that you'd prefer to be fucking, or getting the promotion that you've waited for years, or whatever it is, you're trapping yourself in a smaller and smaller universe, right? And the whole message is to expand it. And the way that you do that is through your words and your thoughts. Our comfortable silences are delectable. I'm seeing this in two ways. If you do feel that these are messages from a partner and we're referring to a third-party competition, then just know that they do enjoy being silent with you, maybe with the eye contact, especially with the touching I'm getting, because I'm getting like a feeling of being hugged from the back, as if like someone's really relishing my company, my smell, all that kind of stuff. They love that. If it's not that kind of message, or indeed not that situation, it could be that this person that you're framing as pioneer and framing as competition, or this group or whatever, is seeing some of your silence, which is actually stonewalling, as being a comfortable silence, because they're fairly amenable to you, right? And I'm getting this partly because if we're in the conversation about goblins, they're very friendly, right? The worm, come inside and meet the missus. Doesn't matter that you can't walk through a fucking wall, but it's this idea that like this person might be very hail fellow well met in a way that grates on you, and you offer in return a silence or a retraction of statements, or just, you know, not as much effort as you would usually give to a connection or indeed an interview. And they read that as a comfortable silence and they say, you know what, pile 3 is a good egg. I like our comfortable silences. And that's not what you were going for. There's also like a thing with reference to silence. And again, with the cocooning instead of speaking that we just sort of mentioned, that in a reading which is very much about air energy and utterance, it might be a good thing to just stay silent for a while. Have a think about it. Be quiet in their company. There's a thing later on about watching instead of speaking as well, or observing other people around you, and that being one of your assets. And I do think, you know, in a non-shadowy, non-social engineering way, it might be beneficial for you to watch whoever or whatever you're perceiving as competitive to you, and just take in what they're doing differently, what they're doing the same, where your strengths are, where their strengths are. Same for weaknesses, you know, but just watch and learn, all right? So getting into your Labyrinth and Dark Crystal cards, finally, for the sort of summing up of the situation so far, we have a 3 of Cups. So yes, for a lot of you, this is either a triangulation of a friendship or a third-party relationship situation. We have the 4 of Swords, and we have the 6 of Cups. So, element of nostalgia here with the 6 that I have to point out. This may be to do with a connection with a friend or potential partner that you've known a long time, or known since, I want to say developmental years, not necessarily childhood, but some of you are going to hate me for categorizing it as this, but like the period between when you're preteen and when you're about 25, where you're still developing, you're still learning what your patterns are, you're still moving through the world in quite a sort of let's try it and see type way. I'm not saying that anyone between, you know, teen and 25 is underdeveloped or some shit like that. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm just saying that your experiences are still being built at that age. You don't fully know who you are yet, and you're kind of learning it as you go, right? So for many of you, this is related to a person from your past that you feel may be pulling away or being taken away by a third party who you spent your developmental years with. And like I say, any time from being about 12 to being about 25, right? Not that you're fully grown at 25 either. I'm 35 and I'm certainly not fucking fully grown. But anyway. Speaking to the 4 of Swords, there is like a resting period that might be speaking to the idea that I'm telling you to cocoon and to have a comfortable silence. But also with Ludo, and I'm such a fucking nerd for this shit. I know the scene that this is in, I know the screenshot that this is, and he's looking at the swamps of sadness in this picture and he's going, smell bad. So there's a sense right now of you or a third party, or even the thing that you're desiring, seeing the stink in the situation and having a bit of a time out. The Four of Swords, any four, speaks about stability. It would be Emperor energy if it were to ascend into the Mages. But it's very much about like, in order to be steady, I need to just look at this and be like, right, what the fuck do I do next? And with it being Ludo in the swamps, I'm sorry, mate, but your shit stinks too. And either you're seeing it because of what I'm saying, in which case, thank you for humbly accepting this message and rolling with it, and we'll totally work through this together. Or there's somebody else in your life that is seeing that your shit stinks, or seeing that the third party's shit stinks also. Interesting, no? Because again, I'm not getting the vibe like I did with pile 2, where it's a third party, but it's pretty doomed. I'm getting it could really go either way, and the way it goes is up to your integrity. There's also a vague link to H is for Honour in the last Mini Marseille reading that I did. So if you're vibing with that, check the spoiler timestamps of that reading for that pile and listen to that as well. It does refer to a relationship connection, or a friendship but with strong relationship undertones, similar to this, right? But yeah, the situation is you're a very popular person, you have a great deal of friends, like this guy here, but like this guy here, the advice is, like the guy said, don't lose your head, right? You may be juggling lots of different things, lots of different connections. You may be juggling your own thoughts, your own impulses, in a way that makes you think of, I can't think what they're called, the little fire guys that are in this particular sequence in Labyrinth. You may be feeling that you've lost your head a little bit, or that you don't know which way is up. That's fine. That's okay for you to come to this reading like that. It's just a clarifier that you're in the right place if you felt like that. But there is this, recognition that there's a need for a timeout. Also, with the imagery on this 6 of this Skeksis, and I cannot for the life of me remember which one it is, but it might even be the new Emperor that wins by trial by stone. But I haven't got enough of a shot of his face, and I need to revise my Skeksis garments, guys, right? I'm not 100% whether this is one of the others or whether this is like the Emperor that comes to power. But anyway, we were talking about Emperor energy, so that's my vibe. This is a Skeksis who is very visibly in their finery, and that speaks to some of the stuff that I was mentioning in terms of, are you being shallow? I'm hearing... Come on, they're one of my favourite bands. Brain! My Bloody Valentine. I'm hearing Only Shallow playing in my head, so that may vibe for some of you with some aspect of this connection or reference. But it's only shallow, right? It's the idea that all of this status, all of this finery, working towards the fancy car, the excellent degree, the nice house, the relationship that you can flaunt on Instagram, yada, yada, yada. This is all very like egoic, root chakra fear type stuff for you to be dealing with. And it's not actually where true self-esteem lies. So if your attack of anybody that you view as competitive has been on the level of attacking their looks, their achievements, their notoriety, reputation, sexually or otherwise, etc., etc., this is your call out to say, we fucking see you, right? Goblins, etc. We acknowledge what you're doing, right? And the figure strangely absent from this reading, and I'm seeing that the song is Undue, by the way, so yeah, this is your chance to undo all this. The figure absent from your Labyrinth cards is David Bowie, right? Goblin King, Emperor, if you like, he's very powerful, even though he's got a big trickster vibe to him, right? He may not be working for the good, but he's certainly working for the goblins, and the goblins are working for us right now, so we'll consider ourselves on that side. My feeling is that if you're ritualistically inclined and you do magic or psycho magic or just thought experiments with that kind of shit, whatever it is that your level is operating on, and you are truly a Labyrinth fan, it is okay in a ritual context or a trance state, or even in the dreaming if you dream lucidly, to say something like, Goblin King, wherever you may be, take this spite of mine far away from me. Or status or excess or negative words or impulsivity or whatever it is you want to offer up to the Goblin King. We're all chaos magicians here in these streets. It is fine to call on him as if he's a deity and ask him to help you out and feed that shit back to the goblins, who, let me tell you, will devour it with relish. I can hear them chittering and skittering and giggling at the thought of being able to eat up the kinds of impulses that you've had towards competitive energies. So you can absolutely surrender that to the Goblin King at this time. And if that sounds fucking woo to you, I'm not sure why you're in a tarot reading, but it's okay. You don't have to vibe with everything. This is a general reading for many walks of life. Just take that one as like, oh yeah, it would be good to give that up, right? And let's move on. So your positive differentiations that you are aware of. I heard acutely aware of. So some of this may be like a double-edged sword for some of you, but let's continue. You have a 9 of Pentacles, a 9 of Cups, and a 10 of Swords. And it is, again, Labyrinth dominant, but we won't look at that as the whole reading because I think you balance out. But certainly in being Labyrinth dominant, this airy colour, this yellow of communication is coming out at me, right? So you are a good communicator in general, as well as a good manifester. And that is why particular caution is being... there is an alarm around your words, right? And to pay attention to how you speak. Because communication in the light for you is your greatest asset. You may even be quite air dominant, or you may really be enjoying this Aries Gemini vibe that's going on for the moment. 9 of Pentacles is about somebody as well who's very different to the former piles in the sense that you're comfortable being on your own. You may be somebody who's been single for a long time, or you may just be somebody who, when they are single, does all right, like doesn't really miss it, or is able to just get on with life whether or not they want a partner. You don't really fall very easily into pick-me energies as described in former piles. You don't sort of sabotage yourself through your connections because you're not desperate for connection. And if this isn't a relationship reading, that sort of translates to friends and family as well, right? You're not so desperate for everybody's approval that you will do harmful shit to yourself. So that's good. I'm proud of you there. Sarah is a bit of a mascot for this, actually. Although she can be petulant, it's appropriate that she's on this 9 of Pentacles card because she is somebody who can say, no, I don't want to fucking do this, or I'll be out and about when I want. I'll be back when I want. You have no power over me, right? It's not something that she just says to Jareth. It's something that she says to her parents at the beginning of the movie. She refuses to work on their timeline. And that can sometimes, like I say, be a double-edged sword, where you come off as maybe a little bit fire sign arrogant, but it's also something that can be wonderful and can help you to distinguish your time and your energy from the concerns of others when it's necessary to preserve your own stuff. Pagan poetry's just come on. For some of you, I'm hearing you write poetry, and it is very individualistic. It, again, carries this strong Uranian impulse. I do feel, even if Uranus wasn't retrograde right now, with this reading and with this particular 9 energy, if it could ascend to being a tarot card, it is the Fool, who is ruled by Uranus, right? It's very think for yourself, very revolutionary. And you know that this is a gift that no matter how pioneering your quote-unquote adversary or perceived competition can be, you are genuinely unprecedented in the way that you think, right? They can start new things very well. You are new things very well. And I think that you know that. I think you're laughing along with me. Because it wouldn't be in this section if you weren't semi-conscious of it, right? So then 9 of Cups, right? So this is desire fulfilled, wish fulfilled in the traditional deck. So again, we're speaking about the fact that you're a master manifester, which if you didn't fucking know it before, you know it now. I've told you 10 times, right? And that is a very 9 of Cups energy to be in. This also talks about somebody who enjoys the food, enjoys the drink, can have a good time. It's like the if alcoholic was an archetype in the shadow, this would be the positive of it, right? It's someone who can have a drink and a laugh and make the party a little bit more vibrant instead of getting addicted. So that may speak to you. With this particular Nine of Cups, it's showing the sort of post-deal. Again, I know the scene. This is outside of the walls of the labyrinth, when Sarah has sort of realised that it's this mystical place and that she can get in, but they're still to an extent trapped, and they want to go through a particular door. It's when they see fairies for the first time. So some of you may be doing fairy workings or working with the book How to See Fairies. Excellent book by Ramsay Dukes. Love him. If you're watching this, Uncle Ramsay / Grandpa, I adore you. I don't know how you would stumble on my channel, but hey ho. So they're working with fairy, which is this kind of tricksy energy. So we're talking about glamour, we're talking about trickster vibes, tricking or conning people into things in the light. But also, because we're talking about this exchange between Sarah and Hoggle, like later on, after all of this transpires, she gives him the gift of a plastic bracelet. Remember I said this was a plastic card and you didn't know what I meant, right? Plastic is precious to goblins in the labyrinth because being in such a natural environment, they can't produce it. There are no factories, right? So to them, our plastic crap, well, this isn't plastic, but our junky bracelets are a precious jewel, right? And I think this speaks to the fact that you can see preciousness in things that other people dismiss very easily, like children's movies, for example. But also you are able to offer people exactly what it is that they find valuable, even if at the time it has little or no value to you. And the offering may feel from your end like a trick or like something duplicitous. So for example, right, in a connection, if you are someone for whom your love language has never been, what's the word? It's clearly not mine because I can't think of the term for it. Thoughtful acts, right? Acts of service, that's the one. If your love language is nothing close to acts of service, but you perceive in other people that that is their primary love language, you can do an act of service for them and they will think you're wonderful and think that you're their new best friend, or that the world revolves around you, or you are absolutely the person that they need to employ next, or whatever it is. And from your end, there's this kind of cheeky goblin snigger because it's like you've given them the junky plastic bracelet and you've made the deal, right? You gave them something that was really of no value to you and that felt a little bit disingenuous in the form of communication, because if you really wanted to tell them that you loved them, you might have done it through your love language, right? So there's this idea of you being adept with things like social engineering, you being very good at observing other people. And we did get that thing earlier, didn't we, about watching this play out, watching a third party, watching a competition, but also observing your own stink, or the stink of the environment that you've got yourself into, right? So yes, you're watching and observing, and through that observation, you can very much like make direct eye contact with somebody's soul in a way. You can figure out what it is about a person that makes them tick, or that can be used, I want to say, to manipulate them, but it's not a skill that I want you to use manipulatively. It's just that that is the correct word, even in the light, right? You can steer the ship any way you want because you have a particular knowledge of the ocean that other people don't carry, yeah? Eye contact is a big thing as well, and I do feel if this is a romantic thing, eye contact figures very well into the way that you communicate with your desired person that cannot be touched upon by the pioneer energy, by the competition. So bear that in mind if that is you. As I'm talking about eye contact, I'm looking at my TV doing Spotify, and there's a picture of Bjork like staring at me in a way that is awe-inspiring, threatening, and kind of sexy all at once. This isn't just me waxing lyrical about my feelings towards Bjork. This is me saying, this might be how you make that person feel. I don't want to say your person, because nobody's entitled to anybody else on this channel, right? But the person in question, if that resonates for you. Moving on to the Ten of Swords and staying on the subject of the person that this is sort of about, you know, the friendship you want to keep, the family member that you want to impress, the person not in the third party position, but that you want to be in the sort of dual party, has been in a bind that you have brought them out of. Again, like there's echoes from the prior reading, different card, different depiction, but the same kind of a meaning in the same place for pile 2. Yeah, pile 2. Where you have managed to get this person that we're talking about out of a very sticky situation when they may have felt very afraid. They may have felt like they had no friends and you were their best friend. Or they may have thought that they were existing in a thoughtless universe and you were very thoughtful, right? The reason I'm picking up on that is because the Ten of Swords is always about suffering, whether it's in the Smith way or whether it's just in Cartomancy. Ten of Spades is a difficult energy. It's stabbed in the back, exhausted, can't take any more, at the point of battle where it's like, will I live or die, right? And the depiction on this is the beautiful scene where Kira flies Jen to the place that he needs to go for his quest when he didn't know that flying was possible. So there's this idea, any gender, that your dynamic with a certain person in this situation is that you've shown them what is possible and you've swept them up out of their Ten of Swords energy at some point and flown them using wings they didn't see coming to their next steps, or to the object of their desire, or to their quest, if you like, to where it is that they're meant to be. And that may be in a broader purpose sense as well, because some of you are coming to me, not all of you, but some of you are asking about a sacred connection. Aurora is playing as I'm speaking about it, so both the Northern Lights and Sleeping Beauty are popping up, right? It's like you've been able to transfer this person to the stream that they needed to be on to do their job in the world, even if they don't have a spiritual framework, even if they don't think they have a job or they're completely lost. You flew them from one state to another. And I think that's in your very obvious strengths, because yes, you acknowledged that you could do this thing, but also it's something that they will very obviously remember. No matter what is happening with whoever you feel competitive with, and this isn't necessarily someone that you are in competition with, by the way, could just be someone you feel threatened by. But whatever they feel about that person or those kinds of people or those kinds of advantages, there is someone here for whom you were a kind of rescuer, and they will forever be grateful and forever put you on a pedestal as a result. There's also the thing in this scene that makes me laugh every time, and I don't want to get into gender wars or gender discussion or discussion of whether it's better to be on one extreme end of the spectrum or be non-binary or whatever, because this is not, I'm not getting at girls and boys in this. But this is the bit where Kira says, because he says, Jen says something like, oh my God, you have wings. And she shrugs and says, of course I do, I'm a girl. Like girl power moment for little me growing up with the same hair and personality as Kira. But also, you know, beyond talking about gender, this speaks to you knowing your strengths and having strengths that other people just plain don't fucking see coming. And when they do say like, oh, well, you can do all of these things, you know, professionally, socially, sexually, whatever it is, you can turn around to them and go, of course I can. I'm PAL 3. And you really mean that. It's not like you're flexing. It's like, oh, yeah, I mean, I can. It's just innate to me, right? So there's a sense of whatever it was that you used to help this person out and help them get to their purpose. It's something that flows very naturally to you. And it is indeed a strength that you have as a girl and not a boy, which outside of gender politics reads, as somebody of one kind and not of another. The type of person that you are gives you advantages over other types of people, and you would do well to bear that in mind when you're so intimidated by other people that you kind of want to chat shit about them, right? We've all been there. I did it in the last reading. Anyway, so Strengths and differentiations that you're not as aware of. We've got a Queen of Swords, we've got a Seven of Pentacles, and we've got a Nine of Swords. For this Queen, it's kind of drawing on that differentiation Sarah energy that I mentioned over here. Sarah will do whatever the fuck she wants to do. She will wear a big fancy dress over her jeans, whether or not she is fashionable. She will be out there reading poetry and plays to herself from the Book of the Labyrinth when she has other responsibilities and or in the rain, whether or not you fucking like it, right? And she'll take her dog with her too. So there's a sense that I don't think you're fully tapped into, that other people's idea of what the best use of your time is doesn't get to you. Other people's idea of how you should present yourself physically, the kinds of clothes and makeup and stuff that you should be using, doesn't mean shit to you. You're very creatively engrossed in your own world in a way that is both very unusual and an advantage. Because when those people get to the point where they're bitching about each other's fashion, or they're talking about misuse of time, or how stupid it is to play a game with your dog, you will be in the labyrinth. You will be creating new universes. You will be still very much in your own energy. Queen of Swords in this sense is a very preserving queen. She sets the boundaries between what's important and what's not in order to nourish that which is important. And for those of you who are tarot readers, you may find it crazy that I've said nourishment in a Queen of Swords thing. But the whole point of that Swords energy is that you're protecting something. And for you to be protecting something, for you to be saying, this is important to me, fuck you if it's not important to you, I'm doing it anyway. You are drawing a sacred salt circle around that thing. You are delineating yourself from the concerns of others. And I touched on it in this Uranian mention and this full card stuff down here. But I'm not sure that you're fully aware of it until I've just said it now, right? You do know your own mind, but more than that, you act on your own mind. There are so many people that come to me for readings or just interact with me as friends that kind of hear stuff when I say it back to them and go, oh yeah, but they're not very in touch with themselves to know that that was the case before it's said to them by another party. And that's not to do down my clients or anything like that. It's something I experience myself. Sometimes a family member or a friend has to say some shit back to me for me to get that it was there all along. With you, I don't think that's the case. I think you're a step ahead of all of us, me included, right? You're very aware of what it is that you should be prioritizing, whether or not you do prioritize it. And I would say for the most part, you act on those impulses. I'm going to speak very generally, and again, it sounds detrimental to clients, but bear in mind that I too go for tarot readings. I too learnt tarot for the same reason. And generally speaking, people turn to divination when they have an inkling of a truth at a gut level, but they're afraid to act on it, or they're not yet ready to manifest that truth into their experience, or to drop the thing that needs dropping, or to make movements in the world without somebody saying, hey, heads up from the cards, or heads up from spirit, or heads up from this or that oracle. It's time now. Like, you were right about what you already knew. This is why we get so many mirrors in tarot, because in a way it sort of reflects us back to ourselves, and it's true of Cartomancy as well. But I feel like you already are at that stage where you don't need your own reflection to be doing stuff. It's interesting that this scene that we're talking about, sort of before the rainfall and before the beginning of the Labyrinth story, happens on a water side, a waterfront, on a river, I think. Because it's like she's not even staring at her own reflection. She doesn't need her own reflection in the waters, that classic image of Narcissus, to sort of discover what her own preoccupations should be. And the song that's just finished was had the word echo in it. So for some of you, when I said Narcissus, if you're clicking with something, read Echo and Narcissus, the myth, right? Okay, moving on from that sure of yourself vibe. Seven of Pentacles is about reviewing, storing, gratitude. And we have here very literally, I think it's the Chamberlain once he's been, yeah, because he's in his like undergarments. So he's had the moment where he's been stripped and screaming against the wall because he's been found out. And it's him observing the other Skeksis and the Gelfling and trying to figure out what to do with that. Excuse me, hiccups again. Again, with this thing of observing, watching the other parties, silently looking on to other people. I actually think that if you made more room in your life for silence, and I'm almost pulled to turn the music off at this point. Yeah, let's do that. If you made more room in your existence for silence, instead of filling it with music, activity, and or statements from yourself, I do get the feeling that this capacity that you already have to observe others very well would improve. And the way that it's distinct from where it was mentioned before is that these sevens are about reflection, particularly after a crisis. So we're looking at what you learn from what happened so far, and we're looking at what it is that you can store from the past to take into the future. And the more silence you have in your life, the better this is going to get. I already think you're very adept with other people. Adept is the right word. You may even be a magical adept if you're watching this. But there's a sense in which the last bit of this, the missing piece in terms of your observation meeting with your projections and therefore your reality, is to be in silence and think about how other people operate, and then sort of go forward from that and take that into the future. He's carrying a staff. So I'm thinking of a stang, right? In folk magic, it's this establishing tool. You put the stang into the earth before you open the circle and begin the ritual. You are kind of thrusting a staff into place, sexual pun semi-intended, to mark your territory in a particular space or a particular mindset, and to sort of firmly establish your place in the world. And there is an indication with this that you can do that more quietly or more silently than you think, right? If the sexual unintended pun that became intentional vibed with you, this may be a sense of like, yes, you can watch and observe other people and offer them what they want, but have you thought about the fact that you can do that sensually? And I say sensually rather than sexually, because sex to me is potentially a noisy activity, particularly where goblins are concerned, right? It's very sort of loud, boisterous. There's clapping noises and all kinds of creaking of beds and things, right? And that's if people aren't noisy themselves. But sensuality is quite often a silent thing. It's the touch of a hand on a thigh, or it's the glance that nobody else picked up on, or the way that a hush comes over you when a certain person starts speaking, right? And I think that this is coming up in your unseen advantages and differentiations, because the way that you can seduce, very broadly, not just in romantic ways, can be to do with subtlety and silence and sensuality rather than sexuality. And I feel that for those of you who've been operating in a very overtly sexual mode, perhaps to compete with a third party who's very overtly sexual, draw upon the fact that you don't need to do that. Draw upon the fact that you are different, in that you can be a little bit quieter with your sexuality, a little bit more subtle, more modest. You can hint at things rather than saying them explicitly. You can be the person who maybe is, maybe isn't available, rather than the instant porn star. And in that sense, you can draw things to you, because seduction is something we associate with the kind of sacred yin, the drawing in energy, the energy of intuition and passivity rather than activity and expulsion, right? This isn't about gender binaries, it's about opposites. And there is a kind of solar pushing out energy in the universe, and there is a lunar pulling in energy. And what's coming out to me is that you're comfortable in your solar with all this yellow, but what you don't realize is that you're very gifted with the lunar. You can attract in by dreaming about it, by being indulgent with yourself, by dropping hints, by being sort of subtly sexual, the reality that you wish to happen in a way that isn't like going out there and taking charge and hey, I'm getting this job now, or I'm going to tell you how I want to fuck you, or I'm going to do this thing and travel to this country. It's much more witchy than that. It's more of a drawing itself to you like a magnet. So again, manifester, attractor, sacred attractor, but also, yeah, yin vibes of any gender. This kind of, okay, I'm going to watch now. I'm going to relinquish my need for power, which is what Chamberlain had to do. And I'm just going to observe, and I'm going to be very subtle in my next moves. So this is something you're very good at. So yeah, you know your own mind. You can do that kind of subtlety. And then finally with this Nine of Swords, with Ludo and Sarah holding hands, right? This is, Nine of Swords is like something that keeps you awake at night, or something that you're anxious about. It can be literal anxiety. This can refer back to anxieties that you've had that you've since overcome, or to your anxiety as a gift for illuminating what it is that you need to expel from your existence. If you're interested in me speaking more about that on the channel, I can do a little video on that, because I wrote something about it a bit ago and I only shared it on my private Facebook, but there may be something to that, to sort of sharing it with you guys. But there's this sense with former anxieties, or with the anxieties of others, that they were there to illuminate a certain thing, and you're very good at understanding that process and becoming less anxious. And I also feel that with Ludo and Sarah and this solar vibe on the card, you're good at making and keeping friends. You're a good friend, right? I know I came for you at the beginning of this reading, but actually you are a solid character, and you are, by and large, there for the people that you truly care about. I think maybe what it is that you're a bit like me and you don't have very many of them. Or no, that's doing myself down. It's that you have a lot of connections, but only a few truly close alliances, right? Allies is coming up as a word. But for these people, I feel like you'd take a bullet, yeah? I feel like you're the Ludo friend energy, this beautiful, gentle giant, heart of gold kind of a vibe, where you would do anything for them. Hoggle is a bit more of a trickster energy in the Labyrinth, because he does give her the peach, but Ludo is there for her through thick and thin, no matter what, right? Even when it puts him in the swamps, even when it gets him into trouble, or it's difficult or scary, he is absolutely like, listen, I said I'd be your friend, and I'm your fucking friend, Sarah. Sarah may be a name that's popping up for you. I know that one of my Ludos is somebody who may be watching this who is called Sarah, so hi, if that's you, I love you. But then again, you might not be watching this reading, because I don't think I've ever heard you speak ill of another person. Anyway, I digress. The point is that you're able to alleviate the anxieties of these friends and allies very well, and vice versa. You have a very strong network. And while the Nine of Swords isn't usually something that speaks about networks, it does speak to astrology, and therefore about transits and patterns and synastries. And I think that there are people who you have very strong synastry with, very good connection with, in layman's terms, that you help to alleviate the anxieties of, and they for you. And actually in this, when you feel yourself slipping into the realm of competition, this is a sign that you can tap into your own generous Ludo heart, but also into the allegiances of others who perhaps don't think that way, and will steer you back round to being kinder with your thoughts, with your words, right? To saying, look, it isn't this person that you hate, it isn't this group of people who might get this opportunity, it's actually that the situation is frustrating, so let's see what we can do about it as friends. What a beautiful asset, what a beautiful differentiation. So, when we're coming into the final row, it's about why this shit had to happen for you here and now. Why was it that you had to perceive this person or group as competition? What is it teaching you? I feel like we've touched a lot on this, but I'm going to sort of speak to the stuff specific to the cards as well. Firstly, we have the Nine of Clubs. This is the Ursol the Chanter. if I've got my Uru right. So he's playing a harp at this moment, and he's sending out that beautiful kind of oh thing that doesn't sound like that. Jesus, that was terrible. You can tell I've been talking for hours. But he's sending out the vocal resonance that aligns the group, that brings them together, right? And yet we have it in this card of overburden. So I feel like it's almost like you're listening to what I've been saying about words. You've got the concept. I don't need to repeat it. But your response is like, I'm feeling overburdened by this. I feel like if all my words are magic, if all my thoughts are magic, then I don't have true control over what it is that I'm saying or doing, or it's like an overwhelming thing to take on because it's too much to think about everything I say, everything I do. And I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. Excuse me. We're actually going to take a very short break. Unprecedented. But I've started doing it more often recently. If I need to take a quick break for something, in this case the laboratory, and sort of show you something, and in this case we're looking at this. This is the harp of Ursol the Chanter in the companion book, The World of the Dark Crystal. And I want you to meditate on it and ask yourself what kind of music you've been making. Hello. Okay, so we've thought about the harp, we've thought about vibration and sound for a second. Thank you for bearing with me while I had a short break. I'm just going to adjust the camera so that you can see your cards again properly. And I've just knocked everything onto the floor. Such is the goblin life, am I right? Whenever I shuffle with goblin decks, by the way, or fairy decks, they're always scattering themselves under my furniture. They've just done it again while I tried to sit down. There we go. It's just like it speaks to their kind of chaotic energy, I think. Anyway, so hopefully in that very short meditation on the harp of Ursol the Chanter, I've not completely lost you and you're thinking already about this idea of words and sounds weaving the web and also calling other people to you, right? Something I'm reminded of with that picture is kind of the strings of a spider's web, and spiders also are about vibration and about getting back what you put out, or about feeling in a very, in an almost non-physical fashion, feeling the vibration of another person way before their approach, right? You spin a web so that things that land in it can tell you what they are before you get to them, or tell you that they've arrived before you get to them. So there's a sense with this card and with the webbing and the harp that something is announcing itself to you. I think you'll know what it is when I say this, but it's like something is telling you that it's coming in for you, and you may have a suspicion about what it is. But by being quiet and by watching your words, you're learning to listen, to watch for the vibration of the thing, to know whether it's good eatings in this kind of spider dynamic, right? The other thing with Ursol is that he called to him all the other Urskeks, Uru. Uru, not Urskeks. Sorry, Thrar fans, I'm tired. So by chanting, by playing the harp, he summons everybody that needs to be there, no matter where they were before. And we know from like the expanded Thrar universe on Netflix that like, just as the Gelflings had all these different tribes in different terrains and it was all very complicated and there was like 8 of them, also the Uru could have been spread far and wide. But somehow this guy's chanting, this guy's use of his utterance, invites them all to come to the sacred ceremony, and that's how Jen finds out about his purpose and how it all kind of gets rolling, right? How eventually the Dark Crystal is healed. Again, if you've never seen the Dark Crystal, you may need some stuff explaining in the comments. Just ask me whatever you want to ask me, right? And you may want to work with lavender. I'm just seeing the sort of purple tones in his hair. Anyway, lavender, the herb and the colour. So it's like you can, once you're conscious of using your words in a great way, once you're concentrating on making the soul shrinker beautiful again instead of uglier, you can draw to you the people and opportunities from miles and miles away that you've been wanting all the time. Again, about manifestation, right? It's your song, it's your call. I mean, earlier when I did an impression of Ursol with my sore throat, you know, I was like mock singing to you the song of my people, and it sounded fucking awful. And I think that's a message in itself, right? Because you can sing your own song and make your own statements about things and speak in an imaginative language that is unique and preferential to you. And that is kind of the song of your people, whether or not it sounds good to anyone else. Again, with Sarah being above this card, being like, I don't really give a fuck what anyone thinks. I'm in my dress. I'm enjoying it, right? So if your song, if your statement to the world, if your words about what you're creating next sound kind of crap in the eyes of others, or the ears of others, should I say, don't worry about it. Because this card is telling you that one of the purposes of this dynamic was to get you to this reading so that I could tell you to sing the song of your fucking people, whether or not it sounds good right now, and just go for the vibration, you know, go for putting a ripple effect out to see what comes back, because I do think a lot is going to come back. Seven of Swords with Chamberlain. So this dynamic also existed to teach you about what is sneaky, what is untrue, what is mistrustful. We did touch on this at the start of the reading, so I'm not going to dwell too long on it, but we know that Chamberlain's a sneaky bugger. We know that he has big trickster energy. He'd be a fantastic social engineer. He'd be a fantastic manipulator. I dare say he'd have a massive following on Instagram, and he'd certainly have a troll army via his rants on Twitter and Facebook. He is somebody who, in the negative, is able to manipulate people emotionally very well, right? So this is a call to look at where you do that with others, but also a call to see how you too are emotionally manipulated. What belief paradigm do you have to be in for the idea of this competitive energy to affect you? What do you have to believe that you're lacking to consider them a threat? That's what Chamberlain's trying to gift you with, right? I'm not going to do the whimper, but I really want to. But it is this like, it's like, insert Chamberlain whimpering noise, right? Because it's like the realization that you wouldn't be fucked about this if there wasn't something missing in your worldview or something that needed healing. And I think that's why he's coming in. And then finally, and following on from that, we have one of 4 Joker cards in this combined deck, the Joker of Earth, which again is an Uru, to say that you're in this Uru vibe. You don't have to be a Skeksis anymore. You don't have to operate from malice or jealousy or fear that somebody's going to take your spot, right? We've graduated from that, from all the other characters in fact, and we're in the realm of the Uru. So that's a really good place to be. It's like an ascension vibe. But also, with it being a Joker card, it's like, fucking joke's on you, mate. This whole situation appeared to be one thing, and it was actually another. And if you've come this far in the reading, you know what I mean by that, right? You came to find out maybe how you could oust the competition with your particular skill set, or what it was about them you find threatening, and what it is that you can feel better about in terms of your own strengths. And hopefully you've got an idea of some of those things, but mainly what's come out of this is that you're realizing who you are and what your job is in this universe, and how much more fucking important that shit is than whatever petty dynamic was going on between Gambler over here and Pioneer over there. There's a reason I pointed with my pinky, right? Ugh, it's not important. It's the least important finger. Fuck the pinky. You can operate without it. Please, universe, that's not a wish. I don't want to lose my pinky finger. Sometimes they take me pretty literally, gang. Again, words as utterance, right? You need to be careful what you wish for. Some of you, if you're horror fans, please do rewatch Wishmaster, but watch it from a spiritual perspective. So, like, yes, careful what you wish for, and the guy's fit, and it's all funny and great, but also, if we go under the careful what you wish for paradigm of Wishmaster, What negative beliefs is it teaching you about the world? It's a very interesting trilogy to watch under that. Or quadrilogy? I don't know, I haven't seen the fourth one if it exists, but I feel like there's more of them. It's like Hellraisers, they just keep multiplying. But I kind of lost interest when they didn't use the original guy. Anyway, the Joker vibe is getting me off tangent, as Jokers always do. Wishmaster also is a trickster djinn, right? That's the vibe of this card. And it's in Pentacles to show you that, yes, the joke is on you, but it's applicable in an entirely practical, grounded, diamonds, pentacles way. This is something that you can bring to earth. And indeed, the reason that we're ending on Dark Crystal and not Labyrinth is that it speaks to the unification of the crystal realm, right? If that sounds weird while you haven't seen the movie, it's just like the things that were unhealed and split become healed. And you'll notice that the character who hasn't appeared other than the Goblin King, who is very important to this whole story and dynamic, indeed the most important character for many of us baby witches who encountered witchcraft for the first time in this character, we got a sneaky ogre peeking through this Joker card. Sacred trickster Baba Yaga vibes, but also she is the witch who knows that all of this will be healed and sets you on your way. So there's this sense that, like, it's all being a grand joke. The thing you perceive as competition is not competition at all, but you need to watch the way that you speak about it and what you bring into existence through the way that you feel about stuff. Because if you're seeing this, and indeed if you're seeing my channel, to be quite fucking honest, you are somebody who has graduated from the worldview of cause and effect coming from outside of you, of events being out of your control, and you're ready to step into the realm of, if I dream it, it can happen. And I guess this reading overall is saying to you, so what are you going to dream? Is it going to be for the positive, or are you going to obsess over finicky aspects of connections that you're not too happy with, or things about yourself that you feel that you lack? Take the wisdom of Ogre, right? It's the end, it's also the beginning. This is what she says. Also, the Smashing Pumpkins song is rad. Check it out if you haven't. But there is this sense of, like, as we come to the end of the reading, we begin again at this soul shrinker where we started. And we can bring it into the light. It's like, now we know how, right? Your thoughts, your words, the way that you operate in the world, the times that you observe versus being proactive, the times that you go into silence versus operating in noise, and the times that you call on the Goblin King or on Ogre or on Spider or on any of these other things that we've mentioned, right? But I hope that you do see your strengths, and if you need them reiterating, feel free to go back to these two sections. If you want to book with me for anything more private or personal or anything on a different issue, the link to my Etsy shop is down below. There's also a PayPal donation link down there if you want to chuck me a quid or a fiver because you enjoyed this reading and you want to help me out. This is my sole income, so I do appreciate it when people do that. But if you're not up for that at the moment, if you're in your Skeksis vibe and you want to keep your wealth for the current time that we're in, then absolutely that's fine. I'm not actually calling you a Skeksis. I'm not actually judging you. But please do give me the energetic offering of a like, a subscription, potentially sharing this with friends that you think may enjoy it or see my stuff as relevant, and potentially sticking around and looking at the rest of the channel to see if there's anything else you vibe with. And I hope that I'll see you again. But if I don't, chant the chant you would want to see in the world, right? Take care, pile 3. Pile 4. If you picked the Mandalorian playing cards, very good choice. I'm going to shuffle for you now. Hello Star Wars family, may the force be with you, hopefully throughout this reading. So I spent a long time meditating on this one, because it could be a few scenarios, but the one I've landed on feels pretty perfect, bearing in mind that we begin with the Bright Mother and we end with literally the child, right? Grogu, Baby Yoda, etc. I'm going to read to you first from the book of the deck for Fairies Oracle, Brian Froud and Jessica Macbeth. I don't usually read from the book here, but this book is particularly wonderful. So we're going to talk about your situation in terms of this Bright Mother archetype in the centre, and then we're going to expand from there, sort of talking about you, talking about your perceived competition, the state of things at the moment, and then your differentiations and advantages. The Bright Mother: creativity, nurturing, productivity, intimacy and sheltering. She is the Bright Mother of us all and knows that life, all life, is a miracle. She's constantly amazed at its perfection in imperfection. She rejoices in its being, sorrows for its growing pains, and exults in its successes. This great lady is both Earth Mother and the full bright moon, pregnant with the future of all growing things. She feeds us and provides us with air, water and shelter in an amazing, complex world. She sees to it that we are challenged enough to grow, but not so much as to be overwhelmed. And if we want more challenges than she provides, we have to give them to ourselves. The Bright Mother is the guardian of family life, and she creates and holds a nurturing environment for us all. She's the garden where vegetable, fruits and herbs grow. Thus she seeks and holds the mysteries in ordinary processes of daily life. The bees making honey, the cream turning to butter, the birth of a baby and its growth, the blossom turning to fruit, and the wheat ripening. I'm hearing in my head the spotchka being brewed, so this will expand. This lady has loving patience for natural processes, however slow they are. Her commitment to us is for life, her eternal life, not our ephemeral in the flesh lives. She's present in all of our deep and committed relationships, facilitating nurturing, loving, creativity and giving. She fosters within us the kind of security that gives us the inner stability we need to explore and adventure out into the world, or out in space, and within our own psyches. She reminds us that there are times when we must put others first because their needs are so great, but that in doing so, we must not lose sight of our own needs and nurturing. One online group member sees her keeping an eye on things, making sure that we all do what we need to do. To another she says, "You know me by the joy in your heart and the help in your head. You can have it all. All you need to do is ask." For a third, the key word about her is able to carry, nurture and enjoy. One last thing, people tend to project their own experiences with mother and mothering onto her. Sometimes this helps us to see her with more clarity, but often it creates a muddle. Not all mothers are good and wise, but the Bright Mother is. Each time we perform a compassionate act of nurturing, we become more like the Bright Mother, learning unconditional giving. When she's present in a reading, she speaks of a time of fertility, creativity, and nurturing of ourselves or others. She might indicate marriage or the birth of a child, or deepening of any kind of relationship. She also speaks of giving one's all to life, not holding back. She's like a cornucopia pouring forth abundance. This may be a time to put the needs of others first, taking care of yourself later. Patience may be needed for the process being discussed. Consider what you have. Acknowledge the people and things in your life, good, bad and indifferent. This consideration is not to judge, approve or reject, but merely to recognise what's present in your life. These are your present fulfilments, the things you've created for yourself, drawing upon the power of unity and the singers, or not as the case may be. These are other cards in the deck, but let's just say drawing upon the force, right? Whichever direction it moves in. Once you've looked clearly at what's present in your life, you may want to ask yourself what you want to change. So where does that leave us? First thing to say is that some of you will be having or have had mommy issues, right? That's fairly obvious from the Bright Mother card, and the assertion within that not all mothers are good mothers. Not all examples in childhood are good examples. And I want you to separate those ideas from what we're talking about a little bit now. This can't I have both thing is very much about having it all. And for the grand majority of you, although still not for all because it is a general reading, this is a reading about your competition for the things that you desire, being your family life or your domestic situation, whether or not you consciously acknowledge that you framed that as a kind of enemy, right? Or adversary or obstacle. That's not to say that if you have children or a spouse or something, that you don't love these people. It's just to say that whatever your domestic situation is, even if you live alone, there is something about it that you're framing as competition for your real self, right? From the self-realized, from the kyber crystal turned white. And for those of you who don't jive with a familial kind of vibe, who aren't heteronormative and don't necessarily want marriage, babies, all of that sort of stuff, this is just a reading about getting in the way of yourself through whatever it is that you're stable in now, that you've built over time, if that makes any kind of sense. So your family in this context is your close allegiances, your immediate environment, and the things that you've put a lot of effort into having around you, which are now kind of things which you're seeking to escape. This may not be the reading you came for. I suspect that for many of you, you don't want to frame family as competition, and you had a specific person or thing in mind, then this isn't what you're asking about. I would ask you to stick with me anyway, because if it's coming through, it's something worth hearing, okay? So beginning, excuse my squeaky chair, beginning with your perspective on this side of the table, we've got the Avenger. I'm hoping that's on camera, is it? Yeah. The light attribute is desire to balance the scales of justice, righteousness on behalf of the society or oneself. And the shadow is resorting to violence in the name of a cause. I don't think, Pile 4, that you are a violent individual. I suspect that this just speaks to an almost physical frustration with your environment that you sometimes have when it doesn't meet up to your prior expectations of it, right? I'm getting the vibe very strongly of like kids running around with messy substances in hand while a partner speaks to you about something important while you're also trying to concentrate on replying to a work email or something along those lines, right? And it can get very frustrating dealing with that kind of chaos. So there's a kind of internal violence, there's an internal aggression. I don't think that you would be violent with your family members or indeed with co-workers or friends or whoever it is that you're feeling overwhelmed by at the moment. But I think that the Avenger in the shadow is there because it's like, it's an aggression in response to a cause that you followed, right? Your mission was to make this thing. It was to establish yourself in this city, which is now too noisy, with this family who are now extremely disruptive or restrictive. It was to be in this connection, which is now just making you tired. It was to have this job, which is now so demanding on your time and energy that you feel you have no resources for anything else. So when we talk about it in the shadow in this sense, it's just that feeling of overwhelm and not feeling yourself. And maybe you've been consuming fiction with like shadow Avengers, you know, fallen superheroes, etc. Kick-Ass comes to mind immediately. And I think that if you're drawn to those kinds of archetypes, it's not just because you're an obvious genre fan, but it's partly like a pull to this like idea of frustration with things. This idea with like, I've made this world and it's not right, and now I want to unmake it in the fashion that it's expressing itself. But the real desire, I'm seeing the song Unison by Björk, the real desire is for unification of things, to come into a kind of peacefulness, right? We've got a little bit of the peace lily in our gathered objects for this reading. We've also got the clock ever spinning, right? The reference to time. I'm not sure if you can see that actually, but it is going. So time constraints are bugging you, possibly children are bugging you, possibly the demands of relatives, of other loved ones are bugging you. You have too much work to do and not enough time to do it in. And that, in a way, is your competition. I think the more appropriate question is, what is it your competition for? Because this is a setting that you've put yourself in through your wishes and dreams about having certain things, right? So if this speaks to maybe not a marriage or a family, but like a relationship that is just diminishing returns and exhausting you at every juncture, and not at all how you imagined that pursuing or being with this person would be, then the question is not, is your competition the relationship? It's, what is the relationship competition for? What did you want to happen here? What is going wrong? Where can you put your attention, your nurturing with the Bright Mother, right? And again, with the Avenger, there's this sense of, I mean, cosmic justice, because we're in a very broad world building thing if we're in Star Wars, but also like, it talks about righteousness and it talks about idealism. So there's this sense of like, it's unjust that such and such is happening, or I must soldier on through this uncomfortable familial dynamic because the ideal situation looks like this. Or indeed, I must join the Rebel Alliance and do all of these things, whether or not I risk my life, because of the ideals that they're following, right? And I'm not saying those are correct or not correct. I'm just giving you a broader way of understanding this ethos. It can also apply to the Jedi, yeah? So we think of like the sort of fallen aspect of the Jedi and the problematic bit of them being about having too fixed an idea regarding emotionality in relationship to the Force. This may seem like a complex thing to bring into a card reading, but essentially what we're talking about here is a grand vision for either society or your life that is not being met because of circumstances that we didn't fucking see coming. Be they children, Anakin, or just the fact that people have emotions and do how they do, right? And you can't have like a desireless spiritual paradigm, i.e. the Jedi, in a world that also incorporates desire in the positive as well as the negative, which is arguably why the Jedi sort of failed, even though I love them with all my heart. And, you know, normally on this channel I'm wearing Star Wars rings. As I'm saying this stuff about desirelessness, the song is Pleasure Is All Mine, right? So there is something there about like, are you trying to be desireless? Are you trying to pretend that nothing is competing with your time and attention? And that you're not annoyed by this stuff, that you're not feeling like an Avenger, right? It's fair enough if you want to privately address it. You don't ever have to tell anybody, but you and I together in this reading can say that you're sick of this shit. That's okay. Doesn't make you a bad parent, doesn't make you a bad spouse, doesn't make you a bad worker, a bad whatever, you know, you fill in the blanks, a bad daughter, a bad friend. But the thing that's with this Avenger is I need you to be just as busy and happy without me. And I think this is you speaking to the people in your immediate experience. This is, I need you to entertain yourselves just for a second, right? Because I don't want to have to be the person to hand you the iPad and be that parent. Or I need you to be just as busy with your own life because I can't pursue this connection right now because other things are competing with us. Or I need to give my time and attention to something and this connection is competing with that. So I need you to have the resourcefulness to entertain yourself, to be all right with your own company, to not need me. Right? This reading is about need, whatever situation you're vibing with. And it can be professional as well. It can be like this, the job is getting in the way of the promotion in a way, right? Because the nitty-gritty of doing the thing every day, of going through all of these tasks, getting everything out of the way, leaves you so depleted in the evening that you can't actually pursue what would take you to the next step. Be that working for yourself, or switching careers, or just like going up within the same company. It's like you have no more time and energy to give to something else because you told yourself at one point that you could have it all, which I firmly believe as a feminist that you can, by the way. It just takes a lot of energy management and boundary setting that is really challenging for some, and that is, you know, constantly keeping you on your feet, I guess. It's like you can have it all, but you need to have the energy to have it all. And I don't feel at the moment that you do. But yeah, there's something about like, it's not that you're competitive with something, and that's what we're reading about. Like, even though that's like what it was advertised as, I don't think that that's what the internal you has come for. The force is strong with a different idea, and that idea is that the things that you should feel a nurturing instinct towards, a sense of maintenance towards, forgiveness towards, because this current song is Show Me Forgiveness, you can't forgive for taking up the spark of you that was kind of left. I'm sorry to have to put it that way, but I really feel that that is how some of you are feeling. It's almost like you gave everything to this, and what you got in return was a blurring of the barrier between what you know about yourself and what everybody else thinks of you. Which, of course, in a competition reading is quite pertinent, right? So let's look at this competition in inverted commas. It's the angel, it's helping those in need with no expectation of return. And in the shadow, it's acting innocent or angelic to mislead others and falsely claiming to be in touch with angelic guidance. For some of you, this like shadow thing of acting innocent is that you have children or older family members who are acting like their shit doesn't stink, see the last pile, and kind of playing innocent when they know they're pulling on your time and attention in ways that aren't cool. So simple example is children misbehaving is taking you away from your work, which is your sort of true goal at the moment. And they know they're misbehaving and they still do it. Another example is a partner who knows that they're pulling on your last thread and yet still pulls. Another example is a family member who triangulates or acts covertly to kind of make sure that you're always available for them, even when you just don't have the time, don't have the energy. There also could be a community doing that, like a church or a school group or something along those lines. Even a community of friends could be pulling on you in a way that's like a little bit underhanded, but then acting angelic about it. And I feel that the light angel is the true intention of this person. They don't want to hurt you. They want to help you. And they don't expect that you'll give anything back, right? But at the same time, they have expectations of you as a person that are unrealistic. And I'm hearing like the myriad sounds and voices in this wonderful song. And I'm just thinking of like the dissonance of so many people shouting orders at you. So again, some of you, this is professionally where you've got so many people barking orders at you within a job that you're like, I can't fucking think about what my own idea on this project would be. I can't hear myself, right? And for others of you, this is family or friends, or this is like people surrounding a connection when you want to prioritize the connection itself. Opinions about a potential partner when you want to prioritize that partner, yeah? And with the thing being, I want to nest with you, that reads two ways, I think. This could be a potential partner or a spouse or something like that that's telling you over here that they want to nest with you, that they want a big wedding, if that's applicable and if marriage is your bag. But it could also be just as much of a threat if it comes from the wrong person, right? So I want to nest with you could be the cry of a child in the middle of the night who's scared of the lightning, but mummy or daddy has had no sleep, and curling up with a wriggly kid is actually not their idea of rest at the moment. It's like this angel obligation to help others, even as they have an angelic attitude towards you. I want to nest with you also could be infringement from a toxic third party on a family unit, on a dynamic. This could take the form of like an overbearing parent who basically wants to move in, you know, or a parent-in-law who always turns up at the least convenient moment and stops you from pursuing the care and the angelic attention to your family unit, your job, your children, all of it, right? I want to nest with you from the wrong person is a creepy stalker vibe. It's, I mentioned it earlier, but it's the You series from Netflix, right? I want to nest with you in the light is, Mummy or Daddy, please curl up with me and let's snuggle. Or it's, hey, I want to build a home with you and maybe have a family. Or it's, I see a relationship building out of this. Or it's, I'd love a big wedding. But again, with this want a big wedding, I want a big wedding in the middle, it doesn't have to be relationship related. Again, these are just communication cards. But it's like this flip thing again with the big wedding. This can be some people's idea of hell. Even if they're in a happy connection, right? Even if they want to be married, having a big wedding can be this thing where all of these voices are shouting at you and you're doing months and months and months of planning. And in the end, the objective, which is to feel closer to your partner and celebrate your union, is kind of lost in the chaos. So it can be a threat as much as it's a blessing, but also it can speak to somebody very literally wanting a big wedding with you, or a further commitment, or a more established relationship if this is professional, right? So there could be an energy of someone saying, hey, I want to be on the same team as you. I want to promote you so that you can work with us in this dynamic or in this country or on this project. What do you think? And your internal dialogue is screaming, can I have both? Because you're feeling this Avenger vibe of like, the stuff I've already committed to over here and outside of work is so great, you know, whether that's a commitment out of an angelic impulse or a commitment chasing a dream, that it's like, you don't think you can do both. You can't do the big wedding. You can't do the big promotion. You can't offer somebody what it is in a way that you're here to offer, right? You can't offer your full self because you were concentrating so much on an aspect of who you are that it sort of took monopoly over the full picture. And the full picture of you might be a mother or a father. It might be as a child to a parent. It might be as a partner. It might be as a good friend, and it might be as an excellent worker or a professional entrepreneur for some of you with this. But all of those things being simultaneously true is infinitely more complicated and requires a lot more energy than just one or two of them being focused on. And my sense is that at one idealistic point in your early days, you focused on just one or two of these things to the detriment of the full picture of yourself. And that's why you're here. Okay, I'm just going to shuffle in my chair a bit because I'm decidedly uncomfortable, which I imagine is how you're feeling. Oh, that's better. Stretch out if you can, mate. Oh, infinitely superior. Right. So we have a Queen of Cups, a Joker in water or earth, and a King of Pentacles as your kind of, this is the energy, right? So description of your situation. You'll notice that we have one thing that is like organic, if you like, and two things that are droids. I think that's significant. I think that speaks to you feeling like your actions in terms of whatever the situation is are almost robotic and automatic at this point. I'm not speaking ill of droids. I can't wait for them to have their own spin-off. I love droids, particularly this one, but there is this sense of like a robotic quality to your everyday life that could not be expressed outside of a sci-fi deck. So that's partly why you picked this one, right? And then with this person in the middle, it's like the focus is on someone else. Both of these characters kind of lead into this, but these are counterparts. So for many of you, this is a relationship reading. This is about a marriage, or at least a partnership that you can see going very, very long term, which is either competing with something for your attention or has taken something else from you in its need for attention in your life, all right? And it's up to you to decide which that is, because I'm reading for a great deal of people. Queen of Cups speaks to an emotionality and a need to sort of connect with self. But it also speaks, weirdly, for a Star Wars reading, about like Holy Communion, right? Bear with me. So we're talking about transubstantiation when we talk about the Queen of Cups or Scorpionic energy. So the idea of something, e.g. Christ, being made into a physical substance as a catalyst for development. That may seem overly complicated, or it may fill you with religious disgust, because not all of us on here are syncretist or Christian or whatever. I mainly use it as analogous to this idea that you had a dream, you had a consciousness about something, you grounded it into earth, which is why Pentacles is showing up twice in this situation, or Diamonds if it was a different deck. But then this grounding of it into something else is meant to be a catalyst, right? And this speaks to why we manifest things like family. We create a family unit because we want connection with other people. We want to nurture other things. We want to have the bond of a community, and we want to pass on legacy in a useful way and mean something on this earth, right? And that's why we go into partnerships. It's part of why we have kids, although it's a lot more complicated having children, and you will have your own reasons. They are by no means the exclusive ones. But the idea is that you have a grand vision that you've made into a real thing, and then that thing was supposed to be a catalyst to the end state, which in these examples would be legacy, community, love, nurturing, expression of love, you know, intimacy with other people, understanding how children think and behave, delighting in it, pleasure at its base thing, right? And I feel like the missing link in this Queen of Cups for you is that it hasn't, the transubstantiation has happened, but it's empty bread, it's empty wine. It isn't leading to anybody feeling a religious experience or being saved. I'm not meaning to be offensive to those of you who are Christian when I use this example. It's more to say that whatever it was that this holy process was meant to bring about, it's not showing up in your life, and you're frustrated, man. I feel it. For some of you, this may even be a frustration with religion. It's like I put my all into this thing, and I made sure that I was the pillar of the religious community, and where am I at really? If anything, it's competing with the other aspects of myself. And you're trying to tap back into like the consciousness that you came to it with. So, moving on to the Joker in the middle, it's like the whole situation is a joke. And I don't mean it's a joke to you, and I don't even mean it's a joke to anybody else involved. Your kids, your spouse, your church, whoever, they all have good intentions, right? We established that with the angel card. But it's almost like it's made your dream laughable to you in some way, because you're focusing so much on one thing that you can't hack another. And then with the counterpart energy at the other side, any gender, you don't have to be a queen or a king. We've got this Virgo vibe, we've got the King of Pentacles, and we've got being established in materiality. So for some of you, you may have very real, pressing financial concerns that play into this situation. And again, it's like turning you robotic. It's like your nurturing mother self is becoming a robot or a droid. Your protective and financially establishing, like traditionally fathery self, if we want to be compat, is also becoming a droid. So your security and your love and pleasure are both threatened. It's no wonder you feel like this situation is a joke. And also this figure is a trickster, right? He's I can't think of the sort of thing that he's from, but he's a Ravager type, right? He's fucking around in space, yeah? You wouldn't want him to take care of the things that you hold dearest, even if you would want to interact with him. And it's that kind of a thing. It's like, am I going to hand this over to somebody completely untrustworthy, or am I going to manage it myself, but manage it to the extent that I have nothing left for anything else? Man, I'm feeling tired even as I'm reading it. Yeah, there's a splitting with you. The song that's on at the moment is Carry My Joy on to the left, Carry My Pain on to the right, right? There's this dichotomy with you of like, this is exactly what I wanted, thank you, also I hate it. It's okay, you can admit it, it's fine. Because that hate is a temporary state, it's not going to be there forever. I still think that there was a reason that you manifested this dream into reality, even if it's subconscious, submarine is coming on. So below the level of conscious thought, the waterline, if you will. And I don't think that, like, I'm not trying to express that you have regret about the situation that you find yourself in the sense that you wish you'd never been married, or you wish you hadn't pursued this person, or you wish that you didn't have kids, or you wish that you didn't have this job, or whatever it is, right? You wish you hadn't moved to the city, you wish you hadn't moved to the country. It's not like that, because there is still a sense of gratitude from you that you did it, you managed it, and here are these beautiful things around you that you want. It's just that they're all very loud, and they all have demands, and you're only one person. So that's the sitch. Getting into things that you are aware of or can acknowledge about yourself that are advantages to vanquishing this competition. So vanquishing the competition may, for you, mean integrating all aspects of your busy life, right? We don't mean you're going to conquer your children. We mean that you're going to balance everything so that it's manageable for you. So the skills you're aware of that will help you to do that, we've got 10 of Wands, 8 of Cups, and 3 of Wands. So you're able to carry a great deal of burden. You're able to do a lot of projects at the same time. In a work capacity, you can take on a lot more than the other work causes there. I'm hearing the word donkey. It's like you're packed with all of this stuff to carry, and it's fine because you're kind of made that way. Not condoning animal abuse, it's just the metaphor that came into my head. And then with the 8 of Cups, you're very able to walk away from a situation that isn't serving you, particularly if that safeguards another person. The reason I'm saying that is that we've got the kind of typical Mandalorian helmet, right? Not to say it's more common in the Star Wars universe, but to say that, like, this is more of a Din Djarin helmet. This is the one we're familiar with as being Mando, whereas these are kind of variations from Mandalorian lore. So with it being this helmet and it being walking away, it makes me think of Din's journey. It makes me think of what he walked away from Mandalorian culture to do. And I think this is also partly why I've picked the Mandalorian deck, right? Because there's something you're discovering or protecting that is out of sync with your traditional upbringing or the expectations of your immediate environment or conformity in general. There's a need possibly to walk away from certain frameworks that are too conformist and demand too much of you in a realm where actually things are harder than they seem. You know, Star Wars universe, there's always unexpected obstacles, right? That's part of what makes it fun. But in a real life situation, having somebody try and fuck you over every time you go on a new mission is not so great. So getting into this Mandalorian mindset, maybe even protecting a child, you're kind of walking away from the stuff that doesn't serve you emotionally in order to conserve energy to do that. And for some of you, this is walking away from the expectation of family or religion or government, i.e. walking away from Mandalore and taking your helmet off occasionally in order to be able to do this shit, right? Tenuous metaphor, but I'm here for the Star Wars content, so. Also, the song Desired Constellation just came on, which I think is fitting for the scope of this reading, and also for the idea that, like, whether Smith-Waite deck would have depicted an 8 of Cups as a person walking away from a load of cups towards the moon, the Star Wars universe might depict an 8 of Cups as a person flying their ship away from an old constellation and towards their desired one. And this is very much something that you're already able to do, and I think you're conscious of that, right? You may even identify with a lot of characters in this universe because you know when to fly away and you know where to put your concerns, and you could have this kind of flippant Han Solo attitude to a lot of stuff that isn't relevant to you, so that you can conserve energy for the stuff that really does vibe with you. You may have even picked the previous pile as well, because that quality was strong within them. And then with this 3 of Wands energy, there's a sense that you can be quite entrepreneurial. So either that's applicable in a professional way, and you're already very aware of that, and you've kind of made your mark in the business world, or if you're like the head of a household, or you're just managing studies or something sort of along non-professional but equally important managerial lines, it's saying that you can send out different ships for different projects. I can't remember the name of the guy, but I'm thinking of the dude from this episode of Mando season 1 who sends Mando and the gang of not so great people out to the space prison on his mission, right? He has very little part in the episode, and yet he almost presides over the whole thing. And that is, again, the Star Wars modern equivalent of the image of somebody sending out their ships in this 3 of Wands traditional depiction, or of them sort of looking at a globe. I can't remember whether that's the 2 or the 3. But it's this sense of being worldly, but not having to travel the world anymore. It's like you, what's the word? You know how to delegate. Yeah, you know how to delegate. You know how to strategically itinerize a day. You may be somebody who puts up the family chart on the fridge of who does what on what night to make things easier from everybody. Or you may be that person professionally. You know, you might manage a team. You might be a professional consultant. You might be kind of the head of something in that sense, or just the head of the business, and you delegate and sort of give jobs to other people in order to make sure that things run smoothly. And you're very good at it. And these two link in, not just because they're from the same suit and the same helmet, but also because like they're both about managing a few things at once and being able to do that with a kind of agility that is rare. So I think you're already aware of that. Like I say, it's in the aware section. Let's move to, excuse me, I've got a card stuck to my foot as I shift around. Let's move to the stuff that is going to help you out of this dynamic, but that you're less aware of. So we've got a King of Swords here. It's interesting that it's this guy. I can't remember the character name. Please comment down below if you can. I know that I love the actor, and I know what I remember him from in terms of other things that I've seen on Shudder and the like. But yeah, I think it's interesting that he's turning up in this King of Swords Gemini kind of energy, or at least how I read King of Swords is Gemini, because he speaks to the mutability and adaptability of the intellect. We've already seen that you have a great managerial capacity, and that actually you're capable of delegating all of these jobs and responsibilities and people that you have pulling on you, and letting other people take care of some of it, right? But this guy specifically speaks to the intellect behind that power. You would not be able to have that skill if you weren't a crafty bugger, if you weren't a clever little girl, if you weren't space savvy, shall we say, in a way that this character very much is. There's big chaotic neutral vibes from a few of the characters in this reading. I dare say I include Grogu in that, because he could go either way still, right? He stole the cookies. Who's to say yet whether he becomes Jedi or Sith? That's my theory anyway. But it's kind of, you know, you've got two like space miscreants and a ship which could go in any direction, as well as a couple of droids which are kind of aligned to however they're programmed, right? So there's like a morally ambiguous undertone to this, which I think you'll find quite delicious if you're used to being in the mode of always doing everything right. If you are this bright mother figure for everybody else, maybe the idea that you could also be a space drunk and a bit of a miscreant is a little bit exciting to you, and I want you to float with that. I want you to fly that ship wherever it takes you, even if it's just in your fantasy world. It's also speaking to the idea that you may, what's the word? You may contextualize yourself as entrepreneurially and project-wise very in charge, but you may not associate that with being an intellectual person. And I'm here to tell you that you are very knowledgeable. You have a great deal of intellect and intellectual capacity. You're highly intelligent in ways that are both social and strategic. And it's time that you used some of those gifts in combination. So the previous power was a lot about social engineering and about soft manipulation through, you know, compassionate means and through above board means to the people in your environment to exchange with them what it is that they want for what you want. I think you also carry this fantastic capacity to do that. You may also be able to sweet talk anybody into anything with that Gemini vibe, particularly if you have a Venus in Gemini. Hi. There's this sense of persuasion, of like soft, I'm getting this bright mother in combination with it, so it's like a sexy, voluptuous, soft-spoken way of telling anybody anything in order to get what you want. And you might be thinking of that as an evil femme fatale character, but it's not. It's using all of the gifts that you have to get the kind of equilibrium that you seek. It's being able to compete in whichever fields you choose by making sure that anything which takes your time and attention away from that is softened and soothed by what a sweet talker you are. That doesn't mean giving people falsehoods, but it may mean giving people sections of the truth or suggestions as to what to do next, right? I immediately think as well, and I don't agree with the gender politics of this, but there's a term for like the soft manipulation of a partner, but making it seem like it was their idea. What is it in there? There's a book where I think it's like, God, it's terrible that I've even looked at this, but trust me, back in the day, I was a fragile being. My circumstances were not what they are now, and I was not spiritually aware. And I read a book called Why Men Marry Bitches, or Why Men Love Bitches, or something like that. There's two of them. And they refer to the cunning fox archetype in that. This is the person who suggests everything to a potential partner to make it go their way, but also makes them think it was their idea. The dumb fox, not the cunning fox. So it's like you're planting the seed of what they're going to do next, but then you're playing dumb about the fact that it was actually your orchestration. And when this is in a light and spiritual and compassionate vibe, instead of in the shadow Macbeth energy, we can see it as kind of, you know, maybe there are people in your household who aren't pulling their weight. So what can you promise them or give to them that's absolutely delectable to their understanding, that will help them to do this thing so that another worry is off your mind? Or at work, like, what is it that you can hint to in the way that you describe a thing, even like in a vaguely NLP way, for those of you in advertising, etc., where you can drop a word in there that is so evocative for another person that they agree to go forward with a project or to manage something that you would have had to manage, or something like that. So it is a trickster energy, but we're not using it for evil on this channel, okay? So we're not manipulating people, we're not giving them a promise for something that will never happen, we're not teasing them or leading them on, or controlling them even. We're still giving them the option to say no, that's important. But we are suggesting that wouldn't the world be an easier place if we collaborated in this way and you did this thing, and then I didn't have to quite strive as hard and I could concentrate on all of the aspects of myself. The song is coming in Ancestors. For some of you, this gift of like sacred speech that comes with Gemini is a call to speak to ancestors, spirit guides, entities that you're working with, and ask them to take a load off very occasionally. We spoke about how you delegate well. Okay, so delegate to spirit, right? Don't be the person who believes in a higher power or believes in the force and then never asks that thing to take over, or never surrenders to the will of the force, right? And whatever your paradigm, whether you're a Jedi or a spiritualist or New Ager, witch, you name it, you could even be an atheist and be vibing, right? But I sense that whatever it is that you would hand this up to, that you would surrender your circumstances to, is kind of on the edge of this reading, ready and waiting to hear what it is that you want them to do, to hear your prayer in a way. If you are a Jedi, this could be like surrendering your current circumstances along with your desire. It could be saying that the Force will move through you in whatever way, and accepting that you find a thing difficult, right? Acceptance is a very Jedi thing because it's a very Buddhist thing, and that is largely what the Jedi structure draws from, hence desirelessness. So giving it to the will of the Force, or asking the Force for another Jedi to come in and help out, because we're not alone in this resistance, am I right? You know, it's that thing of like, ask for fucking help, whatever language you use. Moving on to your next asset. So we know you're very intelligent and you're very kind of seductive and able to get what you want out of other people and or spirit. Now we're looking at the King of Wands, the King of Fire, the King of Ships, if you will. I get the sense that this is like passionate King of Wands energy alongside the literal meaning of a ship, i.e. you can absolutely travel wherever it is that you want to go, right? You've already, wow, the ancestor song's getting really loud as I say this. That's interesting. You've already, we talked about the transubstantiation thing, and I'm sorry for those of you who aren't Catholic or Christian and don't understand that very well, but another example of that kind of dynamic is charting and navigation on a ship, getting in the ship, making sure everyone's secure, and flying to a distant star that you've never visited, and then landing there, getting out, knowing that you'll have enough oxygen because of the information that you were given about the planet beforehand, and then just fucking doing it, right? So we're talking manifestor energy, we're talking someone who can bring their dreams into reality. Again, you may vibe with the previous pile very well. But we're also talking somebody who can set off for a distant star if the current one is not serving them. It's this energy of the Eight of Cups again, it's transition. The reason I think that this ship aspect is something that you're not seeing is that it's well and good to say, yes, I've left situations in the past when they haven't served me or haven't served my family or my loved ones or whatever it was. Yes, I've done the Mando thing of leaving tradition behind to protect something. But it's harder to say, yes, I have been able to travel to distant and unknown territories using the navigation system, which is, you know, relatively janky and fairly full of like vague stuff. So like for some of you, that is, you got hunches from divination and you made a major life change and it worked out. For some of you, that is, you trusted in God and made a huge move, and that move brought you to exactly where you are and all the things you can be grateful for. For others, you made a literal move across country based on very little information about where you were going, or you went for a job that you didn't necessarily feel fully qualified for, but lo and behold, you had enough information, you navigated to that star or planet, you landed just fine, and here we are doing the reading from that position. So I want you to acknowledge the success that there was in doing that, and this sense that you can fly out with these ships. With King of Wands being Sagittarian energy for me as well, like it speaks to this idea of ships and travel across space, but also to knowledge, expansion, academic achievement. You may be a lifelong learner and you may have juggled that with all of the things that we're speaking about today. Or it may be that you've had considerable achievement within academia whilst kind of not knowing the territory that you were about to navigate, or not being familiar with academia as a structure, right? So we're also talking maybe somebody who studied at night school, having not been able to complete regular studies. It's like an unfamiliar environment which academically or with knowledge and understanding paid off for you. So there's an acknowledgement of that as something that you've done well in and can carry forward. And indeed that is your edge on any perceived competition in the future, and can navigate you out of this situation, literally fly your ship out of the situation that is too much for you at the moment, right? There is a sense that you can use your intellect, your manipulation of others in a soft skills kind of a way, and in a positive way, as well as your academic and knowledgeable sense of self and your sense of travelling to the new and adventurous, in combination in some way that is going to relieve the load. What does that look like when you're stressed out? Okay, well, you've moved from one job to another before. If you're taking too much on in this role, can you just switch it up? Can you go somewhere else completely? For some of you, you've already made that step, in which case, congratulations and well done for sticking by yourself. In a relationship, it could be, okay, I've set my sights on this person, not knowing much about them, and I've gotten this far. Can I go the whole way? Can I think about the big wedding? No matter where it is you are on this timeline with them, no matter how close you are or how far-fetched it seems. For people in a friendship dynamic, it could be that, like, you've gone up and spoken to a person that was completely unknown to you before now, and you can fucking do that again. And it will lead you to new networks, new connections, or more intimate and deep connections with the people that you're already in touch with, right? Mouth's cradle, watch your speech with this. That's the song message coming through. Watch what you say to new people and know that you've done this before and you're okay. The music ascended in key, as I spoke about that, right? It's like you've got this. The whole reading is saying you've got this. Don't worry about it. Just be strategic about the ways that you operate within it. And then finally, we have a Two of Pentacles energy. So this speaks to juggling. Very straightforwardly, you have juggled more than this in the past, and you know you have. And it might be in a different realm. It might have been on a different ship, on a different mission, with different people in your crew, right? It may have been a very long time ago, but I get the sense that you found yourself this overwhelmed in the past. And you can use the skills that you used then to get yourself out of it in the present and concentrate on what's truly important to you, which may be related to domesticity, to the bright mother, or to balancing a domestic situation with a professional one, or with one that has, you know, more creative or more spiritual demands, or something that takes you out of your realm of comfort. So I think we've sort of covered why this reading's here, but let's look at the last row, which deals with that. So we've got a Five of Wands, a Three of Swords, and the Ace of Swords, which in this case is a baby Grogu. Yes! You came for the Star Wars content. We knew you wanted a Grogu, and you got a Grogu. Awesome sauce. Anyway, so Five of Wands talks about petty conflict. It talks about people bickering, shouting over each other, squabbles. Again, we're speaking about this on a song with multiple vocal parts. So there is literally a sense of being in a household where everybody's being louder than the previous person. And it's almost like saying, as the music goes silent, it's almost like saying, get to silence, drown out the noise. This is your cue. Again, very similar to the previous pile, to find some way that you can experience silence, even if it's putting earplugs in at certain points in your day when you're working on certain things or cooking or whatever, and get out of the chaos of this five, because five is always big chaotic energy, and into the sense of your capable self as expressed in these six cards that we've already discussed. The Three of Swords is about heartbreak, and in this deck it's about, well, I'm seeing the helmet of the, I don't know whether it's exactly this character, but I'm seeing like the Mandalorian weapon maker, weapon forger helmet. Again, forgotten the character name. Please comment down below if you do remember it for the others, because it might jog their memory and help them along with the metaphor. But if there is a heartbreak in this situation, in this idea of competing selves or things competing for yourself, it's a loss of something which you had to leave behind, or an idea of the traditional or domestic which you feel that you're not fulfilling at the moment because of your many obligations. So the heartbreak is also the weapons. It's literally the swords, right? But it's the idea that Mando had to leave behind this weapons culture, the weapons forger, and indeed part of his weaponry that he was previously so proud of, that was notable, the previous marker of his achievement. So someone else's paradigm and standards were how you saw yourself as being a good person or a bad person, good mommy, bad mummy, good churchgoer, bad churchgoer, good worker, bad worker, right? And the heartbreak in this three is leaving those paradigms and, in a sense, being complicit in the quote-unquote failure to live up to those standards, because you realise that they are not your standards. They are somebody else's. And that's a huge breakthrough in this reading, I think, actually. That, like, yes, you're looking at the situation, all the things tugging on you, the acknowledgement that you feel tired, that you feel frustrated, that that's okay, that you still have the heart of an angel, the heart of an avenger, that the people around you still mean well and want to take care of you too, but that in the end, it is a source of grief for you. It is a source of turmoil and heartbreak. And it's okay to say that the piece of this which was breaking my heart is the Mandalorian culture that I left behind, or the bit of this culture that I'm in that wasn't relevant to me specifically. I am getting culture very strongly in this, so it may be that you had to leave a very conservative religious background, or fly in the face of expectation in your work environment, or perhaps leave a very conservative religious family or a culture clash family to go with a partner who was from a very different background to you, either geographically or in terms of value systems. But I do get the sense that you successfully left that in the past and you broke away from expectations which were not for you. And this reading is an acknowledgement of that, but also permission to be okay with not being okay about it. Because this is really hard. Leaving people behind, even if they're meddlers, even if they're narcissists, is difficult. Leaving entire cultures and frameworks and traditions behind is excruciating, because you have to forge your own ship, your own value systems. You have to decide where you're going next entirely on your own, and that can be really lonely, even if you have a partner or a family. So acknowledge the grief that came with that process, this grief of the Three of Swords, and understand that that is why this reading is coming up too, so that you can be sad about this and be like, you know what, I'm not the fucking perfect mother, or I'm not a saint of a person, or I'm not the best entrepreneur out there, you know, selling my stuff online or whatever. I'm not doing the best right now, and that's okay, because the things that I left behind were not for me. They were not part of my eventual understanding. There was stuff like the child, like Grogu, right, that took priority over those value systems. Is it more important that you're a good bounty hunter, or is it more important that you protect this new being that you've found who relies upon you completely, right? This is the Mandalorian journey that you've gone through. Sort of ditching something which was your entire value system in order to go for something which, although overwhelming at times, seems more fucking important, seems more crucial. And in the end, you're not competing with anything except your past, right? There is a lot pulling on you. You have a lot of responsibilities that are potentially in conflict with each other. But it's not that you're in competition with those things. It's that in order to rearrange your life around your value system, some things have to be delegated, some things have to be trusted blindly. Some courses have to be set by ships for distant stars that we haven't been to, and some people from our past have to be disappointed, or dare I say, avoided altogether, you know, in the Mandalorian story, for you to get to this new thing. So that's partly why you're seeing this today. And we're finishing on the Ace of Swords, which is a crucial truth in any kind of card reading language. And it's the image of Grogu, the image of the child. So for some of you, I'm ending on the note that your children are the most important thing. For some of you, it's this interpersonal dynamic, the person who wants to nest with you, who may or may not be pushing you for a wedding, or who you may or may not want a wedding with, is the most important thing. Or there's some kind of thing that you've been protecting in taking on all of this burden, which seems in conflict for you, that it's like, well, it all comes back down to that, doesn't it? You know, you took on the job that is too much because in the end, you're passionate about engineering or selling products that you make or whatever it is for you. You're passionate about writing, right? And this is why you did it, even though sometimes it seems impossible. For those of you who did make a traditional family unit, compet or otherwise, maybe the most important thing at the end of the day is your kid, right? And this is the reminder that, like, Yeah, all of this was chaos. You feel like shit about it. But look how well your kid's doing. Look at what a bright fucking spark they are. What a snazzy little dude you've made. And equally, if it is a relationship thing or a friendship dynamic, it's like this is the heart and soul of why you did all of this. This is the person on which some of your value system was based. And aren't they fucking beautiful? And haven't you done well to do right by them thus far? To be their angel as they are yours, right? So the competition reading in this case is, there is not competition in terms of other people or other situations. There is competition for your attention and for your time and energy, which is overwhelming for you at the moment. But overwhelmingly, the message is you've done this for the right reasons. This thing you've set up in reality from the glory of your own imagination, this thing you used to dream about that you're now living, whilst frustrating and whilst almost a joke on some nights where you're particularly tired, is the most important thing, right? And it's beautiful. What you've made is lovely. Even though this is a swords card, the way that Grogu is positioned in his crib makes me think of a pentacles symbol, right? It's this thing that you've made, that you've manifested. It's this gift of the earth. And isn't it fucking gorgeous? Well done, you. So, I hope that resonated for you. Please comment down below if it did. I'd love to know what your situation is and what you picked up on. Also comment with any additional Star Wars info that you picked up in the metaphors of this reading, or any analogies that you'd like to make in terms of characters, or things that seemed relevant in your Star Wars framework for this particular message. If you like this, please like, subscribe, ding the dong, thank you kindly. Share with any friends that you think may enjoy these kinds of readings, whether or not they pick this one. Earth Intruders has just come on, so I'm hearing share this with your sci-fi friends, whether or not they go for the Star Wars pile. And if you want to book with me privately to get more specific, you absolutely can. The link is down below. Or there's a donation button if you feel like this was really valuable and you want to energetically offer something my way and help me to keep alive, because I am also an entrepreneur. I also have a family dynamic and a relationship that I am nurturing, and it's hard out here in these streets. So, you know, chuck me some coin if you feel that that's something you want to do. But if you can't do that, I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a wonderful time with the rest of your day or night. And delegate a little more, take the weight off, realize your own intelligence, both social and intellectual, and set a course for a new paradigm, knowing that what you've made here is truly fucking amazing. Bless you, Pile 4. May the Force be with you.